Welcome to part 3 of this Codelab on Flutter and building a unicorn app. So in this Codelab, we're going to build out a bottom navigation for our application. So we're going to continue from where we left off, and that was when we had the setup. So in this part, we're going to implement the bottom navigation using a nav component. So to create the nav component, let's go back here. One thing to note is, in order to set up the config, I had to go to preferences, Flutter, and set up the path for Flutter where my Flutter is installed. So set up the Flutter SDK, and then you can select any options that you might have here, and you can say allow test files to be recognized and hit OK. Now in the config, you can create a configuration using the template. So I use the Flutter template and hit plus to create this Flutter configuration. There is another thing to be aware of, which is that in case you ever get stuck, you can run Flutter Doctor to diagnose any problems with your Flutter and Dart installation. So that should give you a full scan of all the dependencies that you might have, and you can fix them as needed. Okay, so with that said, let's continue. Now, in order to add a navigation, we need this nav component. So in our bottom half of the my app component, we're going to add the nav component inside the material app component. So let's go ahead and do that. So this block here is the scaffold. So we can get rid of the scaffold, and we can add a nav component out here, and we can call it home nav. We can put the trailing comma there because that's kind of the convention in Flutter. So since this is a nav component, we have to create that nav component. So we can go in here, say nav.dart, and in the nav.dart file, we can essentially create a stateful widget. So our my app container or our my app component was a stateless widget. To create a stateful widget, we can hit ST and select new stateful widget, and that gives us a new stateful widget, and we can call it nav. Now inside this stateful widget, we have this build method, and it returns a widget. It's returning a container for now. However, in order to have a full navigation, we can do something like this. So let's try to do that. Essentially, it has an app bar, a body, and a bottom navigation bar inside a scaffold. So we replace the container with a scaffold, and it's always good to hit a new line in Flutter development, because new lines help you make the code more readable. Now in the app bar section, we can have an app bar with a title, which is text, and we call it unicorn app in this case. In the body, we can have a section which is the centered section which has a child of widget options. So we need this widget options, which are essentially all the options that we need. So we're going to have to select and import material.dart for that. So we have material.dart here, and let's see if we can get our widget options. Let's see, yeah, so these are the widget options that we've declared. And so in our state, we need to declare our selected index and our widget options. So let's do that. And inside widget options, inside our body, we can say widget options, and we can say element at and the selected index. So the selected index keeps track of our navigation selection, and for our bottom navigation bar, we essentially need a list of bottom navigation bar items. So in this section, we can have a bottom navigation bar with bottom navigation bar, and then items with a const of an array of bottom navigation bar items. And so that should give us bottom navigation bar items. Now there are 3 of them here, so we can essentially just use those 3, and that should give us 3 bottom navigation bar items. Now inside of our scaffold, which is the block here, or in fact inside of the bottom navigation bar block, we need 2 state variables. So we need the current index, which is set to selected index, and we need the on tap, which is going to call the on item tap method. Now this on item tap method has not been created, so we need to create it. And the on item tap method would essentially set the selected item to the correct value. So in our on item tap method, we have selected index set to index, which is passed in. So here we can say on item tap with the index of the selected index. So let's see here, on item tap is called, and it will pass selected index into on item tap. Now we need to close out the scaffold block with a semicolon, and that should do it. Now in our main.dart, we need to call our nav components, so we can say import package nav.dart, and let's run that. Okay, so it hot reloaded that, and we can see that we have a navigation. So that's all for this part. See you in the next one.